We also have very weak judiciary, and so the problem is more here. And we all know that the technology is aiding even the fakers. So Nigeria probably has the highest of recorded, let's just note it, that it's recorded quantity of substandard falsified medicines. In the sub-Saharan regions, where I mean, some other countries may not be recording and sending data, so that's why we say probably Nigeria has the highest. In Nigeria itself, the problem is not limited to just one part of the country, it's national. This is where we have equal distribution of it. If you mention Onitsha and Aba, we are going to give you Mushin and Idumota. If you think it's a problem, you go to Kano, you go to Kaduna, even Abuja is all over, northeast, northwest, is all over the place. So it's a big problem. And so in order to curb this problem, NAFDAC, that has the responsibility of securing pharmaceutical supply chain in Nigeria, has come out with yet another way it thinks it can handle it. And that is using the mobile authentication service, which is one of the efforts. So the objectives of the lecture will have been to show origin of and how mass operates, to show the limits and problems arising from mass, and to offer suggestions for improvement. Techniques in analysis. We all know about organoleptic tests that we can do using our 5 senses. This is one of the tests that ordinary people and ourselves without equipment can do. You also have content, and if you now want to be a guinea pig, you wait for therapeutic effect. If it doesn't come to be and the diagnosis is correct, then it may be that the drug is substandard or falsified or both. So then, we also have tests for physical properties, which is getting more seriously about testing. You have disintegration, you have reflectance, spectroscopy, refractive index, and so on. You also have chemical tests. We have colorimetry and dissolution. You have the chromatography. We all know about thin layer chromatography. We have high performance liquid chromatography. We have gas chromatography. Now you are talking of heavy equipment, very expensive. And so when NAFDAC is crying, we do not have equipment with that. Those are the kind of things they are talking about. Because when we rely on the package that is being registered by NAFDAC, then we can reasonably assume that the product is okay, because NAFDAC will have done this at the background, which we could not do. We also have novel technologies that are constantly being developed to detect falsified and substandard medicines. Now, sophistication of technology. Advancement of technology worldwide has increased the sophistication of pharma counterfeiting. And the fakers are probably slightly ahead, or they are slightly behind. The thing is, they are moving with the sophistication of protecting the products. So NAFDAC has now tried and is still trying to use various technologies with mixed success, of course. There is the RFID, which is a very interesting thing. So they go to the field or at the port of entry or wherever they want to, and they bring out the equipment, and the RFID will aid them. We have others like the black eye, GS1 barcodes, which are more sophisticated than the ordinary barcodes that we know of. You have the TrueScan device. We have a hologram. Interestingly about hologram and the fakers is that when hologram came, the people wanted to use it because there are two types. There is the 2D, there is the 3D. The people wanted to use it, determined to use one of it. The fakers assumed that they were going to use the more sophisticated one, which is 3D. And this was actually intercepted in the Republic of Benin when they were bringing in their own 3D, not knowing that those who wanted to use it were going to use 2D. So the sophistication is on to try to improve. So NAFDAC has now veered into another one, which is mobile authentication service. Nigeria is not the first, but then it's the first country to use MAS extensively for the security of pharmaceuticals. Other countries have tried it. Some are still trying it. You have Kenya, Ghana, and India. They've used the service, but on a pilot scale. Thank you. So just try to catch this. It can't reach. All right, so we have even the UK. The average amount of faking in the UK, in the EU, is between 5 and 7%. Ours is 17. In the UK, it's about 2%. And you won't believe that UK wants to get rid of that 2%. And they are also using the mobile authentication service. Although not the way that we are using it. I'll talk about that later. So now let's go to the stakeholders. The stakeholders in the use of MAS. First is the NAFDAC that came up with to initiate it, really. I'm still going to talk about how it came about. NAFDAC is the one that initiates it. They have the oversight. They have the power to coordinate, and then they regulate the professionals in there. Then you have the holders of certificates of registration. Those are the ones that import or manufacture the product. You have distributors and wholesalers. You have community pharmacists. You have patent and proprietary medicine vendors. That's PPMVs. And the MAS, that's mobile authentication service providers. And we have 5 of them. I'll show that later. Then we have the GSM operators. We also have their own regulator, which is National Communication Commission, the NCC. Then the consumers and the general public. At this point, I would have loved to show, oh yes, thank you very much. You can see on this schematic drawing, I try to even remove some aspect of it so that it will be reasonably clear. Because the GSM operators, I didn't put them. The wholesalers, I also didn't put them. Not that they are not important, but then because of this scheme to shrink it a little bit, you can see the sophistication of this. You have the NAFDAC, which is an agency on its own. You have another autonomous agency. They cannot control each other. They can only collaborate. Meanwhile, MAS cannot go on without those under the NCC. So you have the service providers, the 5 of them are listed there, and they are regulated by the NCC. The NAFDAC can only give them license to operate in our own domain, but they don't have too much power over them. The worst they can do is, okay, go away, we don't want you again. Then you have the holders of certificate of registration. What they do is, the product comes to NAFDAC, they analyze it. If it's a new product, they give it a product identification number, which we call NAFDAC number, and they do the test before that. All these machines we are talking about, all the equipment, and that's why some delays are there, while the HCRs are afraid of expiry. After wasting time at the port of entry, you have waiting for NAFDAC to test them before they give them the PIN. And so all this is done in the background before they can now send it for pasting the panel for scratching on it. So the process is that way. And then after that is done is when it's now passed on to the wholesalers or directly to retailers. Now you could see what is going on there. The last bus stop is the community pharmacist. So they bear all the grunt that comes when MAS fails. And this is where the problem lies. Sorry. So the way it operates is that, okay, we know how it operates anyway. The serial codes are on the package. You scratch it, you find a certain number on it, and then there is a short code to which to send whatever you find under to. And so it goes to one of those 5 providers, and then the result comes, and then you are told that it's either genuine or it is not. Now there are a lot of faults in there. The communication between the providers and the owners of the product, that's the HCRs, sometimes is faulty. They release the product into the market, and when patients scratch at the community pharmacist level, the message is that sometimes the message is false negative, and that's a very big problem. But let me quickly say that mass has limits, and it has only one thing and only one thing only, and it is to only guarantee the integrity of the supply chain of pharmaceuticals, nothing else. It does not tell us about safety, efficacy, quality of the medicines, and all those are not taken into account. For us to have that, full medicine quality assessment requires qualitative and quantitative testing to verify identities and amounts of the active pharmaceutical ingredients. So other tests are there too. We've talked about them. You also have to check for impurities, disintegration, dissolution, sterility, and stability. So the capacity of mass is only to guarantee the integrity of the supply chain. And so when people are now talking about the drug is fake or it's not fake, just change that to it is coming from that company or it is not coming from that company. So we need to understand this, and if we understand, then we'll be able to criticize in a better way. Now, the problems of MAS operation in Nigeria, it starts with the weak regulators and weak regulation coupled with our judicial system and very meager fines, and that people can get away with. You have chaotic drug distribution, and then we have MAS intervention that is a very complex one. Perhaps NAFDA does not know that this is a very complex intervention, but we saw the kind of interaction between the stakeholders. If you had the chain reaction, the weakest link, as we learned in organic chemistry, is that the weakest link is going to determine the rate of that reaction. This one, you have several chain reactions like a web of the spider. And so it's a very complex one. So then, because of that, to develop a protocol for monitoring it, for assessing it, for adjusting it, the protocol is very difficult to develop because of the peculiar problems that we have. The problems in GSM operation, sometimes there is no response, sometimes there is delay response. Sometimes you have been in front of so many patients, somebody is shouting, this is fake, this is fake. You say, okay, let's check again. You bring another product, you check about 10, no response. After everybody had gone, 3 days later, all the SMS coming, genuine. There's no time anymore to tell those people who have lost confidence in you. So we have that problem. We have misunderstanding among stakeholders that brings all these false responses. Then there is the literacy level of the consumers. You also have consumer error while entering mass codes. Sometimes we also know that when we are trying to recharge our phone with scratch cards, we mistakenly enter those digits. I've been blocked once for entering them because I didn't scratch completely, and so I did that 3 times and I was blocked. And this happens, and it can lead in MAS to false responses and to say that the product is fake or there will be no response at all. So when some clients get that, they get aggressive. And that's also the aspect that is also there for NAFDAC and other stakeholders to engage in more of publicity. Then there is the cost to the HCR, that's holders of certificate of registration. This service is not for free. They have to pay a fee, and so the cost probably transcends at the end of the day to the consumers. The probable sources of errors are that the pilot on medicine for chronic diseases, implementation on medicines for short times use only. That is, when the pilot was done for mass to be used, the pilot was done with glucophage. Glucophage is a product that is used for chronic diseases. So it will have been okay to implement that on drugs that are also for chronic disease. Because somebody that has a chronic disease has a peculiar way of ensuring that what he's taking, his life depends on it. If I have malaria infection or any other infection, if I try one drug, it doesn't work, I still have time to maneuver and try another or go and do another test. But when it is asthma or diabetes or hypertension, you don't have such. So they've scrutinized their products very well. So the attitude is different. So they had about 90-something% success rate, and glucophage was very happy because it reduced substandard falsified medicine of glucophage. So there is a problem in there that they shouldn't have done that. They should probably have used other products, not the anti-infective that we are doing today. Then implementation science exists. When you are introducing any technology in healthcare, you must follow implementation science. I don't think NAFDAC followed implementation science. Failure to mass as complex intervention, like I said. Then there are 5 short codes because they have 5 providers. I think that's another problem. So all a FICA needs to do is just put an arbitrary code on his own, and people will scratch, they won't get a response. I will think that, yeah, that's network problem. And so they are still existing there. It would have been better for them to have just one code and let it be with NAFDAC. So when you check, it's NAFDAC that is responding and say it's fake or it's not fake, and they can put the message that they're supposed to put in there. The earlier messages are actually inciting patients against community pharmacists. They tell you it is fake, do not use. And so the patients want to hold the pharmacist by the neck. You are selling me fake drugs. I heard that in Port Harcourt, a pharmacist was actually assaulted. So you have all this as problems. There are more. Now the problems of community pharmacies with mass is that the phrasing of that response, NAFDAC has recently just changed it a little bit. Then loss of time addressing mass issues. You have patients at a critical time. You want to cancel, you want to do all this, and somebody is talking about scratch cards, MAS not responding or responding falsely and the rest of them. So you don't actually have time to do the real job that you want to do. Then you lose clientele, that's economic loss, and some people get assaulted, and we are like being driven to disobey the constituted authority. We don't want to be part of it. So possible solutions. There is urgent need for development of an assessment protocol for mass. Then there is strengthening pharmacy regulators, NAFDAC, PCN, NDLEA. There is the taming drug distribution process. We all know what's still going on with this MDDG thing that is just dragging and dragging. We need to reduce the short code.